So San Jose's gun owner liability insurance requirement and tax scheme is now being challenged by various taxpayer associations who also are claiming that this is unconstitutional. So let's talk about this. But real quick before we jump into this video, if you think a city shouldn't be taxing a fundamental right like your right to keep and bear arms, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. Also want to thank the sponsor of this video, which is Danger Close Armament. Danger Close Armament is a veteran-owned and operated company that does amazing work like slide milling, optic cuts, and slide coating. Currently, they have a turnaround time of about 2 weeks for slide milling, which is actually very fast. I first became aware of them because they did some custom handgun building for another YouTuber that I actually watch frequently, which is Talon Sai. And after seeing what they did for him and his custom build, I actually fell in love with a lot of their work. If you guys are interested, you can go check out their website. And if you want to pick something up for yourself, you can use the code SCHOLAR10 for 10% off of any parts that you order. Thank you again, Danger Close Armament, for sponsoring this video. So like I said in the intro, San Jose is now being sued by various taxpayer associations who claim the ordinance in the city is unconstitutional because it violates the First and Second Amendment rights, but also because it is an invalid tax. Now for some background on this ordinance that is being challenged, there are two major things that this ordinance seeks to do within the city of San Jose. First, it requires gun owners in the city to maintain liability insurance and also for them to have to pay an annual gun harm reduction fee, i.e. a tax, for being a gun owner. In section 1032.10, the ordinance states, a person who resides in the city and owns or possesses a firearm in the city shall obtain and continuously maintain in full force and effect a homeowner's, renter's, or gun liability insurance policy from an admitted insurer or insurers as defined by the California Insurance Code, specifically covering losses or damages resulting from the negligent or accidental use of the firearm, including but not limited to death, injury, or property damage. This section goes on to state that anyone who owns a firearm on the effective date of the ordinance must obtain the required insurance within 30 days. Now first, I don't have to tell you guys how absurd that is that a city is requiring Americans to actually maintain an insurance policy so that they can exercise a fundamental right. Second, a major issue with this is that I'm not aware of any major insurance holder right now currently who provides liability insurance for firearms, so those in the city might not even be able to provide the required insurance within that allotted 30 days. The second major thing that this ordinance does is it requires the payment of an annual gun harm reduction fee. Section 20.32.215 of the ordinance states that a person who resides in the city and owns or possesses a firearm in the city shall pay an annual gun harm reduction fee to the designated nonprofit organization each year. Now the fee is stated to be about $25 a year is what they're claiming, but even worse, the ordinance will be giving that money to a nonprofit who will likely be an anti-gun organization. This ordinance also then excludes law enforcement, of course, CCW holders from this whole enforcement, but again, there are not many CCW holders in this Santa Clara area, and it also has kind of a socioeconomic mechanism in it, so it essentially says if you're so poor that you can afford this, then you will also be exempt from that. But again, they don't set like how much that money actually is, like what is your income level for you to qualify for this exemption. And for those patriots in the area who are saying, well, screw all this, I'm not going to pay, I'm just not going to comply with this at all, just be aware that under the ordinance, they're requiring that you submit a proof of the insurance and proof of the tax payment, and that you maintain that proof whenever, wherever you store or transport your firearms. If you are caught without this documentation, then you will be subject to administrative citation, you will have to pay a fine, and also the city could attempt to sue you under some sort of civil liability case. Also, the ordinance creates an impoundment mechanism where if you have not met the requirement of the ordinance, the city can seize all of your firearms and then essentially give you a hearing after the fact. So essentially, due process, confiscation, and again, due process after the whole fact. Now, the city of San Jose passed this ordinance despite resounding opposition, and in reaction, NAGR filed a lawsuit against the city immediately. That case is NAGR v. the city of San Jose, and it's currently going on. Now, after all of that, you have now various taxpayer associations suing the city, claiming that this scheme is actually a tax and therefore should be struck down. This lawsuit was brought by Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, Silicon Valley Taxpayers Association, Silicon Valley Public Accountability Foundation, along with individual plaintiffs. The plaintiffs first claimed that by requiring San Jose gun owners to pay an annual gun harm reduction fee to a private nonprofit organization that the city manager will designate, this therefore forces San Jose gun owners to associate with or support that private group and to fund their message in violation of the gun owner's right of free speech and association under the US and California Constitution. So essentially, the plaintiffs here are saying under the First Amendment, both under the US Constitution and also under the California Constitution, these individuals have a right of free speech and association. But this gun harm reduction tax that they're being forced to pay, and that they're being forced to pay to a nonprofit who likely advocates for things that they don't agree with, this would be a direct violation of those rights. The next argument they make is that this ordinance would be a clear violation of the Second Amendment. And that is because the ordinance has put in place a condition on the continued exercise of those Second Amendment rights. And that condition would be that they're required to continue to pay this tax, and they must pay it to a designated private organization. And if they don't choose to do that, if they choose that, hey, I don't want to pay this tax, well, then they would potentially have their right to keep and to bear arms within the city stripped away from them because of this whole confiscation mechanism. So these taxpayer organizations are claiming not only does this ordinance violate the First Amendment rights, but also they're advocating for the Second Amendment and your right to keep and bear arms. I would bet that the city of San Jose was not expecting this type of lawsuit when they first decided to pass this ordinance, which is really awesome. I am glad that someone else is jumping into this, suing the city of San Jose, because again, this ordinance violates both First Amendment rights and also Second Amendment rights. Now, the main argument that the taxpayer associations brought in their complaint was that this ordinance includes a special tax, which requires voter approval, but the city never got that. They argue that although labeled as a fee by the city, the annual gun harm reduction fee does not qualify for any exemption from the definition of a tax enumerated in Article 13C, Section 1, Subsection 3, and therefore they claim this is a tax. They clarify that a special tax is any tax imposed for a specific purpose, and that the annual gun harm reduction fee is imposed for a purpose of reducing so-called gun harm, and therefore this in fact is a special tax. And as a special tax, it must go first through the citizens for a vote and be approved by 2/3 of those voters. This ordinance, which has been passed by the city, never went through that process and therefore is invalid. Finally, they argue that this is an unconstitutional delegation of power, since the ordinance unconstitutionally delegates some of the city's power to tax and appropriate tax revenues to a private organization that is not answerable to the voters, but instead is simply delegated by the city manager. Based on all of these reasons, they request that the ordinance be found invalid. So it's nice to see that the city of San Jose is getting sued for this unconstitutional ordinance. And again, they're getting sued at multiple different angles by multiple organizations. And I'm all for more and more lawsuits against this city who is trying to cram down this unconstitutional ordinance. As we get more information on this case, I will definitely let you guys know. If you have any questions, go ahead and comment down below and I'll try to answer to the best of my ability. Also, if you like this video and like support the channel, one of the best ways to do that is to like, comment, and subscribe. All those things help to fuel the algorithm or fuel Al Gore's rhythm. It adds fuel to his jet, and it signals to YouTube that you guys see value in this video and in this type of 2A news. Again, I want to thank everybody who likes, comments, subscribes, who hits that notification bell, who shares these videos. You guys are directly impacting these videos, impacting this channel, and helping me to reach and educate more people than I could have ever thought. So thank you so much for all of your support. And as always, thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And never forget, this is Built by Arms Scholars and Station Maintain Arms Scholars.